Hi, this is Mike Young with Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled Four Things Children Need from Their Father, presented by Pastor Daniel Simmons, Senior Pastor of Mount Zion Baptist Church in Albany, Georgia. This workshop was presented as part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference, hosted by Noble Warriors at Bonsack Baptist Church on Saturday, February 23rd, 2013. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family.
Thank you so much. When I was originally asked to come, and if you would just start those on that side and pass them out, and we may not have enough, but I've got some more that I get to you at the end. But if you saw the movie, one of the themes, and really the key theme of the movie, was to address the issue of fatherlessness in our communities, and that's whether you're in an urban area or rural area, fatherlessness is an issue. And so when I was asked to speak, I originally gave the topic for my workshop of what I actually preached from this morning, and that's looking at four things that every father needs to give his child. And obviously I gave you three, and the fourth one would have been authorization to be a man, which comes from the passage at the Mount of Transfiguration where Jesus repeated the idea that this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased, and then he added, and hear ye him. And but what I asked Mike if I could do was change it, because since that time God has called for a shift in our ministry at home, and it is really hot and heavy on my heart, and so I thought that I would share with you from it, and I could help you and you could help me. And here is what we have been doing in the past. We have had a major initiative in mentoring boys who were being inappropriately fathered or not fathered at all. The father was absent. And so we was blessed by God to make inroads into the school system, and when there were children who had issues, teachers would literally refer them to the church, and the public schools would do that. And then, of course, in our own congregation, we had boys who needed help. And so our mentoring program revolved around them. We met twice a month during the year, and then during the summer, we would take the boys for about 7 weeks, and 4 days a week we would have them from 8 until 3 on a regular day. And the days that we took field trips, it may be from 8 until 6, and sometimes even maybe overnight, depending upon when the field trip happened. In the mornings, we did academic training. In the afternoon, we did leadership training and helping them transition from boyhood to manhood. And we would have a boy anywhere from 4 to 5 years and had men who were working with them. But then one of the things that happened over the past 3 to 4 months as we approached the end of the year and we were assessing ministry and doing some evaluation, we realized that while we were being helpful, that issue of the absent father was still major. No matter how much we loved those boys, no matter how much we poured into them, we could not take the place of that daddy. And so just seeking God, how do we help with that? And so what God put in my heart was an idea in which we would minister to the father and the son, where we would find, and I would talk about it here, like, for example, the objective of the workshop, God, how do we find a model that addresses fatherlessness? Take fathers and disciple them so that they can be better fathers. And again, defining fatherlessness 2 ways. One way is when there is no father present. And the second way is if there's one present, but he does not have the skills to do it. And what we discovered was, while the father was absent, in a lot of cases, they were in the community or somewhere close by, but for various reasons, not engaged. We also found that some of them were in prison. And we also found that some of them were in the community and married, and therefore could not publicly, if you will, own their child. And then, of course, many who, because they were not fathered themselves, didn't know how to father their children. So we are putting together a ministry now to work with fathers. And the template follows the outline that I have here, and you're going to help me. And I'm going to help you because I truly believe that as a part of our mission in the church, it's our job to address this issue. It may not be every church's responsibility to handle it in the same way, but I believe that all of us have some responsibility to this issue. And it is not a ministry for the members of our church, but it is a ministry to people outside of our church wherever they are. It is a ministry to people who don't look like us, talk like us, act like us, but it is our calling. And so I believe we have to do this, one, because it is part of what God has called us to do. I believe we ought to do it, secondly, because both the fathers and the sons are hurting. And if we don't help them, nobody else will. Many years ago, I used to work for a social service agency, and at that time, the program was called Aid to Families with Dependent Children. And in order for the wife and the children to get aid, the daddy had to leave. He could be at home, could have been working, and the plant closed, or for whatever reason, he's lost his job. And he comes to the door and says, I need some help. Family needs to eat. Children need to be provided for. I've come to get some help. Sir, I'm sorry. The only way I can help your children is if you leave home. And so he left, if only for the sake of fooling me. But he had to be gone. And that's the way the system works. It does not encourage families to stay together. And so we've got to do it because nobody else will do it. And if that's not convincing enough, if God calling you to do it is not convincing enough, if just for making a difference in those lives is not good enough, here's a third reason that might hit you. You're going to pay for it. One way or another, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it in the loss of peace that you have, because these same young men who are suffering from the lack of fatherness and all of that they're going to be on your streets. And when they have dropped out of school with nothing on their hands, nothing to do, but like everybody else, they want to spend a little money, they want to do some things. They're coming to your house to take what you've worked for. And if they don't come to your house, you're going to buy this real expensive alarm system, and you're going to live in fear because of the fact that they might come. You're going to pay for them to go to prison. You're going to pay for them to, when you go shopping, because of the things that they have taken in shoplifting and so forth and other kinds of costs associated with them, the cost of what you buy will go up. It's going to impact your taxes. So one way or another, you and I will pay. And so my thought is, why don't we just do what we're supposed to do as a church, and then we can avoid a lot of the negativity that we encounter. And so that's my spiel. And so now what I want you to do is think in terms of where you are. Think in terms of the fatherlessness issues in your own community and how you and your church can impact that. And again, what I have listed on the 3 pages that you have are the statements or declarations from the resolution. And each one of them are very powerful in and of themselves, but simply saying them is not enough. And if you've gone through the Bible study book, Courageous, then you know how powerful they are and how important it is to really understand those. But even if you've gone through the Bible study, you understand that you just can't do it. And for those of you that don't have one, I have some extra copies, and I'll be sure that you get one before you leave. But if you can just sit close to somebody to look on. And so here is how the process will work. We're going to go through first and identify the target audience in your community. I will tell you what our target audience is, and based on the uniqueness of your community, your church, you will tell me what yours is. And you identify that, you write that down, because when you leave, you're going to go home and you're going to implement some of this. And then we're going to identify some strategies to engage that target population. And then we will go through and address each one of these particular statements and some strategies that we can use to help men become equipped so that they can do it. Is that plain enough? All right. Everybody got it. Let me talk about Albany, Georgia for a moment. In Albany, Georgia, we have, according to the stats that we get from our state government, about 73% of the children who live in my community don't live with a father. 73%. That's a lot. That's according to government records. All right. And where are the fathers? Again, most of them are there. But where are they? A large majority of them are in the prison system. And when I say prisons, I'm not only talking about the adult prison system, but I'm talking about the juvenile system as well. A lot of them are walking the street and they're just unemployed. And then some of them are around, in and out of their home, and moving between 2 and 3 different families at one time. And so that's who we're dealing with. And then some of them are in the church, some of them are not. And I share this with you. I was in a conversation with a young man the other day. He's 32 years old. And he said, Pastor, it's about time for me to get my life together. I got a baby on the way, and I said, I just wasn't going to do that anymore. He's 32. I said, well, how many does this make? He said, this is number 8. And he's not married to either one of the mothers. And this is number 8. I can't take care of 8. And so you know who's taking care of him, of the 8 that he can't take care of? Me and some other folk. And so that's my target population. In your community, where are the men who are fathering these children? Or is that a problem in your neighborhood, in your area? Don't y'all all talk at one time now? Not a problem. Okay. They're playing video games. All right. Yes. Your own son. Fantastic. So you start in Jerusalem at the house. All right. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, so this would enable me to go back and clarify something. When I say my target area, I am talking about a 90-mile radius around our church. We consider ourselves a regional church. And so we don't just serve the city that we live in, but it includes, and we actually have people who drive in to worship on Sunday, who drive in during the week to participate in other kinds of ministry activities, and they drive in from a 90-mile radius in every direction. And we actually do ministry in all of those places in the 90-mile radius as well. And so you're right. And the city I live in, Albany, is the only quote-unquote city in that region. We got about 97,000 people. The rest of them are rural farming communities. And one of them, there's a county called Terrell, and the one next to it, Randolph. And according to the census, it is the poorest area in the nation. And then you come around and there's a place called Lee County, and not long ago they were ranked as one of the top 10 in terms of the fastest growing community and also in terms of wealth. And so we're talking about every demographic, poor, rich, black, white, Hispanic. We're talking about all of them. And so we consider all of that our target territory. The prison population I talked about, for example, that we minister to is 25 miles away. It's in a whole different county. And so don't just think about, you're right, your neighborhood. Yes. Somebody was, okay. Okay. All right. So you got them in prison. All right. Right. That was going to be my next question. Do you all have high school girls who get pregnant? They got fathers, they got baby daddies, right? And where are those baby daddies? They're in high school. One lives right next door to you. He's a target. Gang banging, target. And I'm asking you about target because part of the plan is you're going to have to go get them. And I'm not talking about sitting out a flyer and saying, oh, we're having this wonderful ministry where we're helping develop, boys into men. Oh, you're going to have to go touch them and get them. Because they won't come if you just advertise and say come. But somebody through relationship, through reaching out, will actually have to physically contact them, get them. And so when we talk about target, I'm trying to help you identify in your mind and write down on your paper so you won't forget where they are. They're in your house. They're next door to you. Your school counselors or somebody at school know who's fathering these children and can identify them for you. And one of the things that we've asked our prison system, we go into the prison now to do church and to the youth development detention centers to do church. We do Sunday school in there, but we're asking them to allow us to bring the fathering program into the prison and teach the men why they are in prison so that when they come out, hopefully they will have the skills needed to go back and actually start fathering their children. So you've got high school students. What about in your churches? You got any men in your church that got children that they don't live with or they live with and they're not really doing adequate fathering? All right. So that's a target area. Any other ideas about where, and again, you may not go after you may not want to go into prison, but what about the school or what about the community or what about the ones in your church? You won't? Right. All right. See, you need to write this down. I think it's critical even there. And you heard me mention ago you start in Jerusalem. I think that be my witnesses, Jerusalem, Judea, I think it always starts home. I think Jerusalem is at home, and our first ministry is in our own families. I don't want to be out trying to save the world and my own messed up. So you're right, it starts at home. All right. Let me just say this again. I see that you are paying attention and you're listening to what people say, but I am serious now. The purpose of this workshop is so that when the day is over, you can leave and go do this. And so, for example, what he just said, you may not see it if you were in one of those rural communities, but the social service agencies would be glad to give you some people to work with. Right. Right. And again, if you don't do it, we know what the outcome will be. Yes, sir. Yeah. What I say then is look in their circle and see who has influence with them, and then get those people to help you. And you'll be surprised if you approach people right, what they will help you to do. About a month ago, my iPad went missing. And for 2 days, I looked for it because I'm guilty of laying stuff around the house and not finding it. I'm guilty of that. And so that's where I thought it was. And then I discovered, well, maybe it's not in the house. So I called my daughter and I said, isn't there some app you can download, find your iPad? And she said, yes. So I downloaded it on my phone and it told me where it was. Gave me the address. And the address was in the roughest part of my city. Gang-banging city. I went over there. No, sir. Took the collar off. Went over there. Knocked on the door. Man comes to the door. He's an older man, so I felt relieved. And said, my iPad is here. This phone said. He said, sir, there's no iPad here. I don't even know what that is. And he was telling the truth. I said, well, do you have any children? Because I'm thinking it's his son. No, I got no children. And so as I'm leaving, I see a fella who looks like, he's a pretty tough boy. So I went, started the conversation, shared with him about my iPad, and talked about church. And he said, give me your phone number. And if I see anybody with an iPad, I'll call you. 30 minutes later, he called me. Mr. Simmons, come back over here. I was talking to my brother. He told me he saw a crackhead with your iPad. I knew he knew where it was all the time. And bottom line is, he got me my iPad back. Got me my iPad back. I pull up to the house. I stand there, and we're on the porch talking. And then 2 or 3 minutes later, I almost jump out my clothes because 2 fellas come running up behind me. And he said, we just wanted to make sure you were not going to bring the police. But here it is. And I believe that not only in the case of the iPad, but in the case of the father that's not approachable by me, there's somebody who has influence enough to get him to come. And we just have to be willing to contact those people. Which leads me to this belief that as church people, we have to get out of the salt shaker and have relationships, not bonded, your best friend, but have relationships with people who are not a part of the church. So when you go to the car wash, strike up a conversation. When you are hanging out somewhere and you see people that you're not familiar with, just strike up a conversation and begin to build bridges so that when the time comes and you need some help, you can get it. But you get other people to help you reach the people that you can't. Somebody can. And if it's a case of probation and parole, that probation officer, parole officer will say, you will go. And it gets them before you. Did I see a hand over here? All right. And then number 2, the strategies to engage that target population. And I am going to tell you, traditional church is not going to be a strategy. It's not going to be one. For that population that is unchurched, and especially under 30, there was a day when people were made to go to church. So even if you were not a Christian and you knew something about church, because until you got a certain age, you were made to go. But there's a generation now who hadn't been made to go. And so they don't know church. And so if the program goes like, we're going to come in and do an opening hymn and have a prayer and go through a Bible study, that one won't work with every population. You're going to have to just talk real straight, talk with them, and help them deal with their issues. All right? And I'll talk more about how you do that later. But you're going to have to develop some strategies to get them engaged and involved. And as we talk further, if something comes to your head, please say it, because we've not fleshed this out yet, and I am looking for some help. And so whatever suggestion that you've got, they may just help me. All right? Number 3 on that handout, second page. The first resolution says, I do solemnly resolve before God to take full responsibility for myself, my wife, and my children. And of course, if there's not a wife, you leave the wife part out, but to take responsibility for yourself, your wife, and your children. I just mentioned about traditional methods of Bible study won't work. So listen, it says take responsibility for myself. How do you teach somebody that who's 25 years old and has never been responsible for themselves? I suggest that you don't start with a Bible verse to do that. But in plain English, you start with them where they are. And then you take them to the Bible and you help them. And the only reason I hesitate, I have to just kind of gauge myself. I'm in a new crowd. You don't know me. I don't want to be too raw. Okay. So young man, you grew up in a home where mother, father, whichever the case, never made you responsible for anything. You never made up your bed. You never picked up behind yourself. Nobody's ever told you you had to work for anything. Stuff was either given to you or you took it. You made these babies, and you've never been responsible for them. And in some cases, they may not have ever been had anybody around them to be responsible. But either way, you walk them through their reality of irresponsibility and living with a sense of entitlement. And hit them in the face with that and say, today starts a new process. You're going to be responsible for yourself. The mess that you're in now. And for example, when I am talking to some men, they blame other people. Nothing is their fault. For some of them, it's my daddy. Well, I didn't know my daddy. Well, we're going to get up off your daddy today. You don't know what it's like. This is a racist world. It's a racist world, but we're getting up off that today. It's hard to get a job. I don't have an education. It's not my fault that you didn't finish school. So we're not playing those games. Especially with young African-American men, soft don't work. Anybody here an old wrestling fan? Ric Flair? To be the man, you got to be the man. All right, and for certain groups, they can't respect you as a man if you don't come like a man. To be the man, you got to beat the man. That's what Ric Flair said. And so you got to be able to say to them in their own language that you've got to be responsible. And then whatever that person's language, some of them may not be that hard. Some of them may just got caught up. All right. And one of the things I always say is this. Do you know that I pay taxes? And in doing so, when you don't take care of your responsibility, I do. And I don't like paying for something I didn't enjoy. You enjoyed it, you're going to pay for it. Not quite that clean, but that's the clean version for you. And so the idea of taking responsibility is a whole new world for some people. And so how do you teach them that? And then to take responsibility, again, for the wife, if they have one. And again, you're going against a culture that says, for many people, that the wife is co-leader or leader of the house and has often been the person responsible for taking care of business. When I do marriage counseling for people who premarital counseling for people who are getting married, and these are people who are working, who are responsible. But here is the new concept, son. Now you're going to be the head of the house, and this is what it looks like. You're the man. You're responsible for your wife, for your children, and you say, and they come back. Well, Pastor Simmons, it's different now. Women. Unlike in your day, they're going to school, they got jobs, and so it's an equal partnership. And there's some things my wife she's better at than I am, so I'm just going to let her run it. And one of the things they always say, she's better at finances than me, so I'm just going to let her manage all of that. And I say, let me tell you what the golden rule of finance is. Do you know? And they look at me dumb. I said, the golden rule of finance is whoever controls the gold makes the rules. If that woman controls the finances in that house, she's going to run your life. No, Pastor Sam, he ain't going to be. I said, I guarantee. I said, baby, tell him that if he don't lead you, you're not going to respect him. But there's a culture that says that's what she's supposed to do. And so how do you teach them in a culture that runs counter to that, this equality, this whoever is the smartest, the brightest lead? But I said, God said the man is the head. So how do you teach that? And then, of course, taking responsibility for their children. How do you say to a person who has one child or 8 and has never taken responsibility? When I talked to you this morning about authentication, there's something that some of you probably are not even familiar with. But you and I, most of us in here probably can go to the county and get our birth certificate, and our daddy's name is on there. But there's a new generation whose fathers' names are not on the birth certificates. Because for those folk who don't like responsibility, if my name is on the birth certificate, that in part legitimizes me as the father, and so that means when the child support people come after me, they got me. But if I don't sign the birth certificate, then I'm not on the hook. They got to prove it, and I can avoid that for a while. And then you got women who will cooperate with that system. And so this audience that you're working with, you need to understand you're going to have to help to overcome that. And that's just the real world. Now, if I were talking about the little nice church folk, this would be a lot simpler. But the folk we're talking about are folk who have refused to father their children for whatever reason, and those who want to do it but don't know how to do it. These basic things that we take for granted that people know, we've got to help to teach them. And so now you talk to me. Tell me, how do you help somebody in that situation learn how to take responsibility for themselves and for their children and wife if they got one? Any ideas on that? Got to spend time with them. Time in modeling it, so that they understand that there's a different norm than the one that they know. Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah, I feel you. And again, I believe with all of my heart that the church's responsibility, the most active time for our congregation is during the week. Sunday morning is a minor event in the scope of what we do. It's after Sunday morning. And so I believe that it's our responsibility to be engaged. And so that means that for a man like you who wants to give what he didn't get, that some man in the church who got that got to commit to a discipleship relationship to help you be able to do that. That's what has to happen. Any deacons in here? All right, I got 2 deacons. At our church, we took every single responsibility away from deacons except one. Deacons don't count money. They don't look at money. They don't see about the building. They don't see about property. Deacons don't have but one job, and they better do that one well, and that is to disciple people. If there's a person that's in his case, a deacon is going to him, and he's going to take him on, and that's his job. That's all, because that's all you're supposed to do. And so I think that's where the church come in and help you, because that's the only way we're going to break the cycle. There's no government program that will give him that. And some people call this social gospel. Call it what you want, but I believe that's what we've been called to do. So I think that's how we do it. Yes. Yes. Pass it on to Eve. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And again, any of y'all answer, because I didn't come with all the answers. I am trying to help. I don't believe we'll reach everyone, but I do believe that some of them are reachable. And again, experience has shown that while I may not be the one, there is somebody somewhere who has influence and may be able to help. And so we use other people as an ambassador on our behalf. And for some of you, what that means is there may not be any people in your church who has those kind of relationships with the kind of population that you're talking about. And so you have to borrow them from other places. Sherwood Church, for example, the church that made the movie that we partner with, one of the things that their pastor decided to do was to intentionally, one, have a diverse church, and 2, intentionally have outreach in areas to reach people that his church does not traditionally reach. So you know what he did? He called me and said, Daniel, look, we're going in such and such a neighborhood, and this is a primarily African-American neighborhood. We don't understand it, don't know how. Can you send me somebody to help me with that? And so I sent some of my members to help them with that. And then sometimes what they would do is put together a ministry, a model to say, this is what we're going to do. And then he will send it to me and say, you all take a look at this and tell me if there's anything in here that's going to be offensive, anything in here that you think might not work. Because the last thing we want to do is go in and turn people off. And on probably the majority of the cases, there's something in their plan that will be totally offensive to the people that they're going to reach. And it's not intentional, but because they don't know the community, they don't know any better. And so we help them to reshape that. And the same thing with me. Michael, I'm getting ready to do something, and this is a community that I don't know. Can you help me shape that? And so get other people to come in to help you. I've got a church member. When I first got to know him, I saw him on the 6 o'clock news. His son was in a gang, and some boys drove by and shot at him. And so the daddy, who's an ex, well, he said you never ex, but his daddy, who's 60 years old and part of the gang, they got in their car, went by, and did their own drive-by shooting. So the daddy and the son shot him up. He one of my best members. So when I need some help in certain areas, that's his expertise. Pastor, I got that for you. Yes, sir. I saw a hand over here. Then I'm going to tell you something about the prison. Yes, sir. Right. Universal love. Some of you saw the movie Courageous, the tall gentleman who played the sheriff. His name is Mark Glow, and he's owner in an automobile dealership. But he does a men's conference each year in December, and some of the same issues we're talking about now, he would do it. And so the men from our church, the men from Sherwood come. But here's the other unique thing that he does. He's built relationships with drug facilities in our community, with other kinds of people who are involved with police for whatever reason. And the drug facilities, the long-term treatment programs, they bring their people to Mark. Law enforcement bring their people to Mark. And the kinds of things that we're talking about, Mark teaches those folk, and he got a captivated audience. They don't have a choice. Yes, sir. Right. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that's what I'm going to close with prayer. So when I said the tradition of Bible study don't work, don't think I'm throwing away the Bible. I'm just saving that for last. I am suggesting to you, and I'm just repeating myself, that you think through these while we go through them, and you may not do everyone, but think how you can begin to teach whatever your targeted audience is these particular parts of the resolution. Let's move to the next one. It says, I will love them, protect them, serve them, and teach them the word of God as the spiritual leader of my house. I will love them. Again, going back to the young man here, how do you do something that you don't know? And so we teach them. But let's look at this one for protection. I will protect them. The man I mentioned a moment ago who got in the car and went and shot up some folk, for him, that's protection. And for some people, protection literally means physical protection at whatever means necessary. And so part of what this resolution means is, for us in terms of ministry, that we have to teach people to understand that protection is more than guarding my house with a gun. But how do I protect the emotional well-being of my children? How do I protect their innocence as children, even, if you will? How do I protect my wife's heart? Just the broad scope of what that means if I am going to live up to this resolution. And even if you're in the church and you signed it, do you understand what that means and what it means to serve them? And then obviously you can't teach the word of God if you don't know it. And so again, our responsibility is to teach this. And so I'm asking you, how do you teach men this? I've got the book that the Kendrick brother wrote that go along with this. And for me as a pastor, it was easy. I got it. But how do you teach folk who don't get it, who are not pastors? How do you help me go back home and help my people? Give me some ideas. Yes. Okay. Yes. All right. Let me set the context for you, and then it will have more meaning. Albany, Georgia is a small southern town that is racially divided, point blank. And of course, Sunday morning, as Dr. King said so eloquently, is the most most segregated time of the week, Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. With that context, in 1994, we had what was called in our community a 500-year flood. And our church is not near the river, and so we didn't think that we would be flooded. We were set up to be a shelter for people who were flooded out. And lo and behold, the water came, and we literally had 9 feet of water in our facility, wiped it out. Homes, I mean, it was devastating. And, of course, people were offering to help us and everybody else who were flooded. And the very first church, and we got help from churches outside of Albany from across the country, but the very first church to come to our aid was Sherwood. One of the assistant pastors came over. We were over there. The water had receded, and we were cleaning up. And he says, "Can I see Pastor Simmons?" And I said, "I'm Pastor Simmons." And he told me who he was, and he was representing Sherwood and Micah Cat, and here was a check to help us out. And so I called him up and obviously thanked him, and we started talking. And part of our conversation was the community needs to come together in this crisis to help out. And so all of the churches got together, white, black, even the people from the Jewish synagogue, because when our church was in repair, we worshiped in the synagogue on Sunday. The rabbi called me up and said, "You can have the place as long as you need it." And so we did Jesus in the synagogue on Sunday. And so the relationship started from that. And we just first exchanged pulpits, and then we created opportunities for our people to start fellowshipping in small groups and working together. And then before we know it, I can't tell you it was on this day, but it was like the black, the white left, and we were just friends, and our churches were just friends. He wanted to be intentional about African Americans becoming a part of his church, and so our music ministry started working together. And one of the best praise teams, ministry musics, bar none, black, white, brown, blue, is at Sherwood and Mount Zion. And it's a team thing, and then the men, the women, the children, we do all kinds of things together in and out of the church, and it just blossomed. And that was against all the odds in that racially segregated town. We made it happen. And folk threatened me, they threatened him. The local newspaper article, the editor wrote all kind of nasty stuff about us. It got real ugly when people realized that, hey, these folk are real. They're talking about loving people regardless of color or creed for real. And we can't have that. And so they came after us, but we persevered, and now it's a done deal. Other folk trying to do it. But that's how. That's how. And let me just say to those of you who are white, Caucasian, don't think that what I am talking about here is not for you. Because again, if I just go back to the Sherwood example, part of what Michael and I we talked about is we just can't be content with serving our own folk. And so Sherwood touched people in these areas that I am talking about, and as you see these resolutions, this is not something that these folk just grabbed out of the air, but this is what they are actually engaged in, and some of these people never set foot in their church in terms of worship. They're not members, they don't pay, and the same with us. We don't look for them as members. It's not about evangelizing them to get them to be a part of our church. We have this program that culminates in December, and with the Christmas dinner, and we give the families gifts, and we serve 900 families in that program, and none of them are on Mount Zion's roll. I'm not trying to get them in the church. I'm just trying to transform their lives, and some of them are in other churches, some of them are not, but we're just trying to pour into them so that they can be disciples of Christ, and a disciple of Christ doesn't have to be a member of Mount Zion. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So does that young man have a hole in his heart that's never been filled? Is that why he's irresponsible? And if his father is not alive or not local to the area, how does that young man ever get that hole filled?
All right. Here is, I don't want y'all to be blown away, and I promise you this is no exaggeration. His father is in his life, and that's part of the issue. Part of the definition of fatherlessness is that you have a father, but he does not provide the right kind of fathering. Hold on to your seats. His daddy got 16 children. No exaggeration. And they're about 8, 9 different women. So he's doing what he's seen. 16. And, and I know the family well, and so sometimes they just sit up and look across town and see somebody who look like them and say, hey, I think that's one of ours too. And so that's why fatherlessness also means that I got a father, but he's not showing me the right way. So it's just repeating. And here's what I can almost guarantee, except God come in and do something different. That young man that has 8, 7, 1 on the way, daddy got 16, his sons will keep the cycle going. Because that's cool. Yes, sir. Yeah. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. That's going to be one of those God things. Because part of what coming whole for him will mean that I now got to look at my daddy in a different way. My dad is not the good man, the great man I thought he was. And I no longer want to be like him. And that's a hurting thing. Because and I can say that from experience, because there are a couple of traits that my daddy had that I picked up on. And then once I came into the light, I realized I had to let them go. But it made me look at my dad in a different way. And it was not good. It was not good. That's all right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you. All right, and what I do is jump to the end. I wanted to say this to last because when I say this, the church sometimes thinks that it lets us off the hook, and we don't need to do what we're supposed to do. But I believe the answer to that is that God can make us whole, and so He can come in and fill that void in you that's there by the Father, and what the Father didn't give you, that God can. And when it comes to God, I can't tell you how, but I can tell you who. And in fact, that's what I'll be preaching tomorrow. God can do that. And again, I won't save that to the end because, when you say that around church folk, they think, okay, God got it, so it lets me off the hook. But we still got to do what we're supposed to do. And God works through us, uses us, and in the end and everything, God can make us whole, meeting every single need that we have through Jesus Christ. Yes, sir. And you were getting ready to hit him. I want to make sure everybody heard that. Florida State Seminoles. uh, yeah. All right. Yes, sir.
One thing that I'm hearing, I'm not really hearing, we're identifying the problem quite well. But I think there needs to be a renewed emphasis on intentionality in or men of the church. And actually, it's intentionality on both sides. There needs to be an intentionality of godly men that are willing to stand up in the church and say, enough of this garbage. I'm going to stand up. God, give me a name, show me a young man or even a slightly older man that needs help being a father in the church. I've been doing this for 10 years, and God has brought two young men to be the mentor over that period of time. But there also needs to be intentionality, even if uh, godly men are not stepping up to be the mentor. The young men need to realize, and I think they do, they need this. And that there needs to be intentionality on that part to go to God and say, God, I need you to point me to a godly man that I can go to, and he can help me in this process. So intentionality on two parts is a very integral element.
Yes. All right. Again, we were looking for strategies and models, right? I think you just got another one. You ought to wake up and write that down. You ought to wake up and write that one down. I am. I'm taking it back home. All right. Yes, sir. Right. I confirm that, affirm that, and if I'll just give you a 60-second testimony, not to brag, but just a testimony. I am not the best preacher in my city. All right, there are preachers who preach rings around me. But we have the fastest growing church in our city. And we started out not the largest churches in our city, but we are the largest and most influential church in our region. You would have to go to Atlanta, where the Eddie Longs, the Creflo Dolls. I figure you recognize those names, but there are many mega churches. But you'd have to go there to find another church that's more impactful. That's the word I use. And here's the reason why. Is several years ago we decided that we will create a culture with this in mind. The first and greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. So we would create a culture that when people came in, it was clear to them that we loved God. And the second commandment was this, that you love your neighbor as yourself. And so we would love people when they came in. And the history of the church was one where, to put it mildly, we were a class church. And the idea was we only wanted people who were like us, and that was upper class. The town where I am is a college university town. So university people, educators, people in business, that's who was a member. Anybody else was not welcome. And they made it known when you came in there. If you were different, get out the door. And so we decided to change that. And so now it's everybody, it's whosoever will. And the drawing card is the love. I come from a dysfunctional family, but I can come to Mount Zion and I'm going to be loved. I know there's some issues. It's not a perfect church. But there's a genuine effort to love me regardless of my situation. And that is what grew our church. Plain and simple. People ask me, I tell them it's a God thing. And that's it. And again, because, Sherwood, I know them, and that's how they grew and became a diverse church. And it was the idea that whoever comes in, we will love them. The judgment, there's no place for it. We love them. That's the key. Let me say a couple other things, and then I'll let you all have the last words. When I open up, I talked about some reasons why we ought to do it. It's God's command and how nobody else will, and we're going to pay for it one way or another. But let me share with you another reason that I see, and it is just a burden for me. Because fatherlessness is an issue, and the government and foundations recognize this, wherever there's a problem, the government and these other people will put money as a solution. And so you have other groups that are developing mentoring programs to draw this money down. And so these same boys and men who are fathers, these other entities are going after them. And they're having these programs, and they are pouring into these men, these boys, and I promise you what they're pouring into them is not godly. And if they are the only option out there, we're going to be in trouble. And there's no doubt in my mind, you may not be aware of them, but I promise you they're in your city, because there are people who spend their day, or they got people who just go online. Who's giving money for this? Who's giving money for that? And they become an expert in that. And they draw their money down, and they get it. Going back to this morning, again, I talked about these fraternities and sororities and so forth and other groups, and I'm part of one of them. And some of them do good work when they do that. They're into mentoring, but some of them don't. And we expose our children, and so we've got to fill that gap so that these other folk don't, whether we get the money or not. And in most cases, you won't be able to get the money because they won't let you talk about God, and we can't do it unless we talk about Him. And so let's save our children from these folk too. The gentleman here said something earlier, Aaron, and I will partner it with what Gary said. Prayer and revival is key. And so as a major part of our ministry, what we have is a group of folk who are intercessors, and they pray for everything that we do. And even the things that we don't do, much of what we do is birthed out of those prayer meetings. And so you've got to be praying. And even when you cannot, for whatever reason, be engaged in ministry, the prayer ministry is more powerful than anything that you can do. And people say, well, they took prayer out of school, and I submit to you that they have not taken prayer out of school. They may have passed a law that says you can't go physically in the building and pray, but that doesn't mean prayer has been taken out of the school. We can sit right here, stand right in this building now and pray for any school in this community, and prayer penetrates that school. So there's room. And so a prayer ministry is excellent, and we are praying for revival next week. Pastor from Sherwood and myself and a couple of the fellows, we will be in Missouri with the Missouri State Convention, and we're going to be preaching and teaching and praying about bringing revival to the state of Missouri. And then we leave Missouri, and we're in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The same kind of thing, because we believe that that's where the next move of God is, as he creates revival in the church, and so that we can make an impact in the world. Now, back to this resolution. I was hoping you would give me more models, and I picked up what you gave me, and I'm taking it back. But let me just share two others with you that I've already decided through prayer and meditation that we're going to make as a part of ours. I believe that the first and greatest model for ministry is to model the behavior you're looking for. And so going back to the gentleman, looks like, is that Lee? What Lee said is that we're going to be calling on the men of our church. We committed to the resolution, but we're going to revisit this thing and say that you really got to model what you agreed to. It was a wonderful ceremony. Everybody felt good. The movie was out, and they all stood around, and it felt good. But the truth is, we hadn't been really modeling this out and living up to it and even trying. And so the commitment is that we will go back and attempt to model it, because there's a phrase in South Georgia that says, some things are caught and not taught. And so as we model it, then other people will see it. And when other people see it, they will want what you have. And so the men of the church, part of the model is to call upon them to do this. And then the other strategy that we will be implementing, and I simply share it with you, is one of the things that we're going to try, and it's risky, but we believe in taking risk, is to take the children and let the children be a vehicle between us and their fathers who are not absent, who are not present, or those who are present but not fathering. And we're going to have a meeting, create a meeting between the father and his children in the same room, and say to the father, he needs you. Say to the father, for example, if he's a middle school student, this is your son's school record to date. And he's been this, he's been in this, he's been in that. And if it's good, we'll build on that. If it's bad, we'll build on that. And I know that you want your son to have a better life than you did. And so what we want you to do is partner with us. It's not going to cost you a dime. But every second and fourth Saturday, if you will meet us at this address, we're going to feed you breakfast, and we're going to sit down, and you and your son will have a time to share, and we're going to help you develop the skills to be the father you want, so that your son or your daughter can be what he or she needs to be. And if he has the gall to look his son or daughter in the eye and say to me, I'm not doing that, then we'll know we may be dealing with a reprobate. but we're going to put them on the spot like that to call them out. And my some of my folk got me to back off because I was going to do it, but they said back off. A lot of these children, their daddies are married to somebody else, and the wife don't know it. And I said I was going to call them too, but they told me I ought not do that. They told me that, let's work that out some other way. But let's model it, and let's see if we can't do it. My time is up, 876-321. But I've enjoyed the time that we've shared together. And please take this, go back, and implement something at your place to try to make a difference. Even if you only reach 1 or 2 people in eternity, it makes an impact. God bless you, and may God keep you, is my prayer.
Well, I trust this message has provided some practical encouragement for you on your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.